Yo, what is going on, guys? It is midnight, bringing you yet again another video on Fairy Tail. Now in today's video we're going to do a tier list video, just a rough one. Now I will put this disclaimer at the start of the video. I've not played the CN version, and there are probably tier lists by players that play the CN version that you might want to follow a little bit more than this. But from my experience of playing the game and from reading some of the characters that I don't have their description of their skills, seeing how useful their kits are and how easy they're going to help you get through some of the content in the game, this is where I would place them in no particular order. Well, towards the top I will maybe specify them a little bit easier, but towards the bottom you start losing value when you get to the rare and some of the SR characters. So the C and B and A tier are probably just going to be a bit of, you know, they're all in the same category. The S and SS tier I'll try and separate into who I think is actually one of the better units out of the row, from left to right. And this isn't including PvP, or not at least complete PvP. Most good units in PvE are going to be good in PvP as well, but I will make a separate tier list later on down the line once I get closer to the end game and PvP is more of a focus in the game for myself. So without further ado, I will start with the top tier, the SS tier. Now there are a few characters that I would put in this tier. To start with is the new one. We'll put Jalal up here. Jalal, I would argue he is the best character in the game at the minute. For people on my server, he's the most recent character. So there are some characters down here. You'll see Jose, Angel, Mirror Jane, Evergreen, Urza, Luxus and Midnight. Those characters have not come out on my server, so I won't be ranking them until they come and get released. But Jalal is probably at the minute on the second week of our server is probably the best unit in the game, up there with Ikaruga. Jalal, he just has so much utility. He can move really fast, he does a lot of damage, he's light and dark, that's a double-edged sword. He has a imprison skill which is insane. Yes, it has a long cooldown, but you can counter that with Urza or Midnight as a leader for the cooldown reduction, and you can even build him with cooldown reduction if you really want to spam that skill. But essentially his whole kit is really good. He has Vortex as well, so in my eyes he's just got so much diversity, and his typing is really good as well because he is versatile. So unlike Ikaruga, he isn't weak to anything. Granted, he does do bonus damage and not as much damage to a said type, but he does good damage to all types. So that alone puts him, I would say, in SS tier with all of his kit. Ikaruga, week 1 character that came out. She is probably the best DPS in the game at the minute with the units that we have. Jalal is a bit more with utility as well as damage, whereas Ikaruga is flat out just good at damage. She has a bit of utility with the second skill having a shield, the first skill increasing her damage, the third skill is just a great AoE attack, and her ultimate is a good AoE fire burning attack as well. Not to mention she is arguably one of, if not the strongest wind character in the game, up there with another unit which I'll get to in a moment. And she carries you through the the palace. I call it palace, but I don't know what the actual name of it is. The floor mode where you like climb the floors, because a lot of the characters in there are wisdom and they are weak to agility. So you'll find that she is really strong for those Juvia, the Wendy, the Leon, and who's the other one that they always fight? Those 3 and Erigor, that's it. Those 4 always pop up. She kills them like it's nothing. And then for the monkey and the wizards, you know, yes, she's weak to them, but they're not exactly that hard to fight. They really are simple. You can just dodge them. And then you just got to look out for the occasional floor 5 and 10 floors where, you know, you might fight someone that's a bit difficult. But for the most part, Ikaruga is definitely SS tier, the only character in the game at the minute on second week of release that kind of competes with Jalal. Those two are arguably the best. Now, 2 other characters that are in SS tier, probably for the time being, are Hot Eye. Hot Eye is like Jalal, not as good in damage. He still does a hefty chunk of damage, but he has a slow AoE slow. He has an AoE attack that lowers defense. He has a AoE attack that pulls enemies in, and if you can get him to 4-star, he has a stun skill. He's also the strongest earth character on the game at the minute. He is just so good. Like, he can cover and help you in a lot of situations, and unlike Jalal, he doesn't do as much damage with his versatility, but he does do a fair bit of damage. So I would argue that he's an SS tier just because of how good his whole kit is. All of his kit is good. No matter what skill you use, it's good. And that's including skill 1, which lowers enemies' defense. So yeah, Hot Eye is definitely SS tier. And the last one I would argue that would be up in this tier is Wendy. Wendy's utility is not as big, however she is the strongest healer in the game, which on some of the harder floors and harder missions is absolutely huge. Also on the wizard test, she's really good to use, because that way, you know, when your character dies, you can't use them anymore. You just bring Wendy on your team, she will just heal your team, and you can get through wizard tests a lot easier with her. She does do pretty good damage, and she is very strong wind unit as well. So this is the other one that I'd say with Ikaruga that's really strong. She has all of her skills that do wind damage, apart from obviously a healing skill. Her ultimate is pretty good as well, because it lowers the enemy's defense. I'll just double check on that. I've got my phone out as well just to confirm the skills, but yeah, her last skill, oh no, not lower defense, it's you're 25% more likely to receive crit hits, and it lasts for 12 seconds. So if you're making a build with crits, you can use Wendy, use that skill, swap into your main DPS, and they're more likely to get a critical hit. These 4 units, I would argue, are, you know, if you have them, I would build them no matter what. Some of them are a bit more difficult, like Hot Eye is a bit more difficult to build than the other 3, but if you get to floor 50, I would definitely pick him as your selector ticket. Even if you have him already, I would still try and push for him to get that 4-star. I unfortunately haven't been that lucky yet, but those 4 units I would argue are the SS tier units in the game. Now we're going to move on to S tier, and I will start by putting all the units in, and I'll go by one and place them where I think they would be. So I believe Juvia should be an S tier. Who else was it? Makarov should be an S tier. Urza should be an S tier. And there's a couple more that I think there should be. Guildarts, I believe, should be an S tier. And Mistigan. These guys definitely should be S tier in my eyes. Just going to double check. I would maybe argue Racer. Again, this is more PvP focused. I would put him here or here, but for the time being, I'm just going to take him off, and we'll get back to Racer. So with these units here, I would probably say in terms of the best unit out of all of these, I would probably put Guildarts here, if not Juvia. Juvia is, I mean, one good thing about her, everyone gets her, and you can practically get her 4-star as well really easily. Her kit is very good when it comes to stopping the enemies, slowing them down, stunning, and just not allowing enemies to hit you. Apart from Wendy, she is probably the best wisdom unit in the game. So if you need a wisdom unit on your team who hasn't been released yet, then she's the best to put on. She's good in guild battle as well, because there's some fights where you need to have imprison, so having her on your team will be good for that. But obviously you got the first skill, which imprisons. You got a second skill, which makes it so that they're more likely to receive a crit hit, and that's only 15% compared to Wendy's 20 whatever it was percent. Her third skill reduces physical and magical defense of an enemy, and her last skill makes a stun. So she is really good, especially for guild battle, when you need to have a stun or a imprison unit, so that way you can not get killed by the boss's 4th skill. And overall is just really easy to use. I would probably put her top of S tier just for that reason alone. Guildarts is a very strong tank in a way, so he's very tanky. He can stay alive for a long time. I personally haven't got him. As you can see, I've had to crop all the images so you can see what units I have and don't have, but from playing against him from some of the people on our server, you can practice against your guild mates or just anyone on your server, just to see against like their units. Someone on our server has a really strong Guildarts that I've tested out against him. Skill 1 is pretty decent as it jumps in the air. You could kind of, I guess, if you use him really well, you could use it as like a dodge in a way. And then he slams down, does a bit of damage. His second skill is really good as it silences the enemy, so they can't actually use any skills. So really good against bosses. His third skill will give him a shield, which is one of his better skills, I would say. It makes him a lot tankier. So you'll find in PvP that skill will be really good because you'll have to break his shield before you can start doing damage, and by that time he's already popped off all of his skills. His last skill as well, his ultimate, just does a load of damage in a straight line, and he's immune as well whilst he's using it for a quick second, so that's really good as well. I should add as well, I should have added this at the start of the video, I won't be doing this from 6-star units, I'll just be doing this from the skills, passives, leader skill, typing, things like that. Because I haven't got to any units to 6-star, I'm not fully aware of how that feature works. I know that they get passives and everything, but I want to give you guys a bit more informed, I guess, content when it comes to talking about these sort of things. So, yeah, Guild Arts, I would put second with all of that. And his passive ability also makes it so he takes less damage from everyone, which is really good. Then the next one I would actually probably put here in third place is actually going to be Mystigan. I think Mystigan is actually quite an underrated unit. I think just because he's in a regular banner, not a lot of people know how good he is. But he's got a very unique kit. He's got sleep, which not many units, I don't think any unit has sleep actually, or if not, they very rarely have it. But his skill 1 will put an enemy to sleep, basically meaning that if you hit the enemy they wake up. It's basically a stun, but if you hit them they wake up, so that's why I would say Juve is a little bit better. I would value a stun a lot more, but I'll get into his kit a little bit more. That will kind of go off of the sleep a little bit better. His second skill, he's immune to control skills, so he can't be, you know, stunned or anything like that, which is absolutely amazing, and also increases his attack. But you're mainly using this skill to be immune to control skills, which is really, really, really good for some of the bosses. His third skill is just literally a dash. Basically, you just do a bit of damage. There's not really much to it. His last skill, however, he inflicts a thing called Fear, which essentially makes the enemies move away from you. So it kind of gives you a little bit of breathing space. It's like a stun, but it makes the enemies run away from you rather than just stand still, which is actually still really good. It sounds not as good, but it actually is pretty decent. Now, with his passive ability, the reason why the first skill with the sleep is really good is because if you use a skill on a target that is asleep, it will inflict fear on them, and you'll get an additional bit of dark damage to them as well. So if you use skill 1 and then pop skill 3, for example, you'll, put them to sleep, and even though you're hitting them and they'll wake up, they'll run away from you, so you're actually kind of like immune for damage for a little while. So yeah, he's really good as well. After that, I would probably put Makarov. Makarov, very similar to Guild Arts, is a pretty decent tank. His first ability has a stun. It's a free hit punch move where he stuns the enemy when he hits them for 1 second each time. His second skill reduces the enemy's light defense, so it's good to use with his kit because all of his skills are light damage. So you can use that first to deal a little bit more damage, use the stun move, and then use his other skills from there. He also gets this thing called a Holy Sigil, and you can stack up to 5 of those, which I'll get into in a moment. They don't really do anything until you use if you have him 4-star and have his ultimate. His skill 3 also gives him Holy Sigil, but this move is quite unique in the fact that you can move whilst using it, so you can actually use it and run away from the enemy. You can use it and dodge the enemy attack if they're ranged. So it's a skill that's quite good really, because you can use it and get out of enemy cover or enemy damage quite well. And you also get one of those sigils. And the reason why those sigils are good is because if you get him 4-star, he basically does an AoE attack, which is really big range compared to a lot of AoE attacks. And essentially what happens is, depending on how many sigils you have, you'll recover health. So if you have 5 of those sigils, you will recover 20% of your max health whenever you use this skill. And he is also invincible, pretty much invincible for the whole use of this skill. When he uses it, he can't be hit for 2.5 seconds, which is really good if you use it whilst a boss is about to use a skill. So you can kind of learn bosses' moves a little bit and then use this move before they use one of their high damaging skills or stun skills, and they won't do anything and you'll deal damage to them. So it's really good. And then my last unit that I'd pop in the S tier is Urza. Again, another SR unit which is really good to invest into and get your hands on. She essentially is a damage dealing tank. She can deal quite a lot of damage with all of her skills, and she has a lot of stagger on her skills as well. She has one ability in her kit, I believe it's skill 1. Yeah, so skill 1 will essentially make it so that you, or is it skill 1 or skill 2? Let me just double check on that one. Yeah, so skill 1 and skill 2 are slightly different. They kind of change her mode. Skill 1 makes her so that she is a tank essentially, so she'll get this thing called immobility, which basically means that the last strike on her ultimate will stun the enemy. And then you've got her second skill, which will make it so that you get like an increased attack when you use her ultimate instead. Her third skill is like a stagger skill, and her fourth skill, obviously depending on what you do with the first or second skill, can either do quite a lot of damage or can just stun the enemy at the end of it. Her leader skill is also really good because you get a cooldown reduction, which is really good for some units, especially having someone like Jalal on your team. There are other units that have got a high cooldown on some of their skills that you can use it with, like Brain, for example. But yeah, she is quite good with that until we get Midnight. Midnight will kind of rend her void, and she'll probably get lowered on the tier list just for that reason. But for now, that leader skill is really good for her. Her passive ability as well is if you have the immobility stat, if you use skill 1, you can have a damage reduction. I've currently got her 5-star, so she actually gets a 45% damage reduction after I use the first skill, and she's in that mode. If I use the second skill, I'll get a damage increase instead of 12%. So this is why I say she's good at damage, she's good at tank. You can really use her either or. And there's some builds in her where, like, you know, when you get below 40-50% health, you can actually get health back, which makes her really good as well. She's actually in my main team with Ikaruga and Wendy until I upgrade Jalal. But for now, she's doing really good. She's doing me wonders, and she's a great unit. I would definitely recommend to invest in her if you're free to play and you want someone from SR rank that's easy to get 5-star. Now we're going to move into the A tier, which is where we're going to start getting into the situation where I'm not really going to rank them in said order. Just everyone in A tier is kind of all good in their own way. So we're going to go back and bring Racer back in. Now, Racer is a really good PvP unit. He has dodge. So I won't go into too much depth anymore with all these A, B, and C units. I'll just kind of go through their main keys and main good things that make them so good. Racer is good later on in the game. He has dodge. So in PvP, you can use him and then you can kind of take no damage. It's really good for, you know, your defending lineups, because obviously when people challenge you, they get real-time battle, you get AI, so they'll just use skills stupidly. But having dodge means, you know, there's an RNG factor and you could potentially win. So Racer is actually really good for PvP. For PvE, he's not amazing, so I'd keep him in A tier. Brain is he's not really got much to his kit, I'm going to be honest with you. He just deals a fair chunk of damage. Like, he doesn't really have anything that's amazing. He has one skill that pulls enemies in towards you. Granted, he is a ranged character. You might think, well, that's not that good, but you could use that in combination with some people on your team. You could pull them in towards you, swap your character to a physical character, and bam, you can start hitting them a lot easier. You can get more than just one enemy with that as well, and bosses are included in that as well. He's also got, I believe it's skill 2. His skill 2 is a very, very heavy hit attack, but you can't move. It's like a beam that he shoots, and this is kind of his gimmick that I found. You use this beam and it can do loads of damage for a long period of time until he obviously has to stop using it. The downfall is that you can't move whilst you're using it. So that's the only thing I would say about that. He would be good for the Pandemonium, because obviously you have 3 people fighting the boss at the same time. Not real players, but your whole team fights him. So you could, you know, use him as your main, position him in a good spot, use it, and whilst your other 2 people fighting the Pandemonium boss, he can just deal the full amount of damage with that beam. And yeah, practically that's all he's really got going for him in his kit. He does have his leader skill increases wind attack, so if there's ever a situation where you need loads of wind units, you could pop him as your leader, and you know, Ikaruga and Wendy will do a little bit more damage. Cobra is another one that I'd pop in A tier. Again, very similar to Brain. He doesn't really have too much going for him. He is pretty lackluster for an SSR. His gimmick is that he has he can heal a little bit, I believe, from his skills, and he can poison the enemy with some of his skills, so they take a bit of damage over time. I'll be honest, I haven't used the unit, so I can't actually tell you how good that ability is, and there's probably people in the comments that have got him and use him and think he's really good. From looking at his kit and from all of his skills, he doesn't really have anything that's spectacular until you get him 4-star. He has a stun on his 4th skill. Passive ability, reduce hit rate and damage reduction by 4 and 6%, not that great. Leader skill can be quite good and useful, as it does make you have an increase in dodge. So if you're running a dodge team, then he is going to be good to use. But outside of that, there's just better units that outclass him in all these tiers. So I believe that's all of the SSR units. So now we'll move on to the SR units. Gargiel can go in A tier. Not much to say about him. He just does a lot of damage with a lot of his skills, a lot of AoE on some of his skills, and he does also have a few stuns on his skills as well. Gargiel you also get for free, which is really nice to have, you know, and his leader skill is really good as well because it increases physical attack. So if you're building physical teams, he's quite a decent leader to have for that reason alone. But yeah, for the most part, he is, you know, a very decent unit. For SR, he's definitely within the top 3, top 5 SR units, and considering we get him for free, I'm pretty sure you can get him 4-star fairly easily. So Gargiel is a good unit, I would say. Another unit that I think is quite underrated is Totemaru. Totemaru is the best fire unit in the game at the moment, up there with Racer. However, I think Totemaru is better in terms of PvE. This is another SR unit that I'd probably argue is close to Urza in the sense of being S tier. This unit I think is slept on. I've started using him a lot more. His first skill reduces physical and magical attack on enemies by 20% for 5 seconds, which is really good for survivability. His second skill obviously burns the enemies. His third skill, it may look like you miss loads of your attacks, but it actually has a long range. He dashes backwards and hits enemies, so you can kind of use it as like a dodge skill a little bit. And his 4th skill is a massive AoE attack, and you kind of get an increase in magical attack fire damage per second. Or you deal like flame damage if they're in your circle. His leader skill increases fire attack, and his passive skill increases fire defense. The fire defense is not a big deal, but yeah, he's the best fire unit, and all of his kit is actually quite unique and versatile. I'd probably put him in the higher end of A, but obviously I'm not going to do that in this video. Soul is another good A tier unit, or SR unit. I would say these are the 5 best SR units in the game at the moment. So essentially he has a lot of stuns, a lot of imprisons. The best thing about Soul is one of his skills is an imprison skill, and it's, let me see which one it is it the first one? No, it's his 3rd skill. So his 3rd skill imprisons an enemy for 4 seconds and reduces their movement speed as well. That is insane. Like, 4-second imprison is really, really, really good. Not to mention this is an earth unit, so apart from a hot eye, if you don't have a hot eye, Soul is the best alternative for earth units, and having that 4-second prison is the main part of his kit, which is really good. But aside from that, he does have a stun on his 1st skill. But yeah, as I said, that 4-second imprison on one of his skills is what keeps him in that A tier range. Now, that would be everything that I would say in A tier. The only other one that I might argue is very similar to Soul in the sense that could be A tier, B tier, is Arya. Now, Arya has a lot of AoE attacks, and if you don't have Makarov, and I guess now Jalal, he's a good light unit to have on your team. Arya has his 1st skill, which reduces their defense, their magical defense, so it's good to lead off with that skill so that your other skills do more damage. His skill 2 is a vortex and brings people in together. So you can use skill 1, then pop skill 2, get all those enemies together and hit them with a skill 3, skill 4, which skill 4 increases their damage reduction, so it makes it so they take more damage, and the skill 3 is just a big AoE attack. So for a light unit, he is very good. I'm sorry this video is getting long. I'm gonna cut down. I won't talk too much about the last 2 tiers, but yeah, for the most part, Ario is quite good in that sense. And I think just because Makarov is the only other good light unit at the moment, he sticks in A tier. Once another one comes out like Laxus, I think Ario can just go down the stage, because his kit then loses a lot of value just because he is a light unit. You know, that's the only real reason why you'd bring him if you don't have Makarov 4-star. Now B tier, I'm going to pop Elfman in there. I'm going to pop Ultir in there. Let me see, who else is there? Lucy in there. Kana in there. Erigor in there. Biska, I'll talk about her in a minute. Sherry can go in there. Natsu can go in there. And then I would even argue these 2 here. I mean, to be fair, I probably wouldn't even have a C tier. I think I'm going to remove a C tier, because looking at it, these units are all like, they're just the worst of the bunch. Yeah, let's get rid of this C tier, I think. Yeah, let's get rid of C tier. We'll just keep it like this. Well, let's change it to S, A, B, and C. Because I'm going to be honest with you, all of the rare characters pretty much do something similar to one another. Let me just move it like this. So, Elfman, he is okay. He has a skill that reduces their defense. He has a stun skill and a fear skill, so he can make them move in a different direction. I got him. I haven't really used him too much. I've used him in a practice mode a little bit, and his skills aren't actually too bad, but there's just so many better units than him. Pretty much all these C tier units, no unit is bad in this game, I would say. Like, not a single unit is bad in this game. I would argue that the worst unit is probably Kageyama, but literally him. Every unit is good. It's just, you're not going to pick these units if you have some of these units above. Example, Ultir, she has a stun, that's great. Her main, well, obviously she's got a heal skill. Her healing skill is absolute dog water. It's rubbish. It's a little circle and you have to stand in the circle to get healed. I'm sure if you build these units maybe at 6-star, they might improve a lot. The only one that I would say is worth mentioning in this tier is Lucy. I think she is probably the best rare character in the game at the moment, pre-6-star. She's got a very unique kit, very diverse kit. Natsu's really good for damage. Gray's decent for damage. Levy's got a very diverse kit. Sherry is a fairly decent unit. Leon is a bit lackluster. Macau is, okay. Kageyama has 1 imprison skill. The only thing that's good about Kageyama is at the minute in Guild Boss, when we get to Agility Day this week, we need to imprison the boss to get the stun. Kageyama is the only imprison guy that we have at the minute in Agility that we can use, so that's his most use. Erigor has a few stuns. Kana is very lackluster. Biska, now this is one unit I would question. I'd probably say she's the worst SR unit in the game. She is just absolute trash. Like, she's really not that good. She has 1 skill that absolutely nukes, but it takes time to get off, and by the time you use it, the enemy's already in your face and you're taking damage, so it's not worth taking the damage just for that nuke. She does a lot of AoE damage on her skills, but she doesn't really do that much damage, maybe because I haven't built her, but yeah, she's just not that good. I'm probably going to leave the video here because it is coming close to the 30-minute mark. Well, it is practically 30 minutes, and I'm sorry for that, but hopefully this has been in-depth enough for you guys to decide on who you want to summon for and who you want to build. As more units come out, I will be adding them in. So like how Jalal's banner came out yesterday, when the next banner comes out, I'll show you the unit skills, and then I'll put them in the tier list in the same video, just so you can see where I'd rank them and make any changes, just so that you kind of get an updated on a weekly basis. I'll also leave a link in the description for my guild Discord. Now you can join it if you'd like, because I believe there's no Fairy Tale Discords at the moment, and eventually what I'll do is I'll make an actual Discord server which is a bit more official rather than just being my personal guild one. And if you want to, you know, give some advice for newer players in this Discord, then by all means. If you want to get help from some players or myself, then you can. Also, I'm going to leave a link in the description of this tier list maker, because I've managed to crop out all these images so that we can actually see the units. And if you would like to make your own tier list and maybe post it in the Discord, then you can. And you know, it's good to just see, you know, what you think is good and see what other people think good. You know, by no means am I saying to follow this tier list. I'm just saying these are the units I think are the best and are good, worth investing in, basically. But that is everything. Hopefully this video has helped you guys, and yeah, peace out.